Here.
Holzhauser? Here. Humbles?
Here.
Reed?
Here.
Fallon?
Here.
Thank you. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The first item of business is a public hearing for the FY18 budget amendment. Could I please have a motion to open the public hearing?
I'll make a motion to open the public hearing for the FY18 year.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Abby Humble, seconded by Beth Reed. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Humble? Aye. Reed?
Aye.
Blue? Bozeman?
Aye.
Fisher?
Aye.
Holzhauser? Aye. Sauer?
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries. Is there anyone who wishes to address the board regarding the FY18 budget amendment? Okay, seeing no one, let the record show that no one addressed the board. And could I please have a motion to close the hearing?
I move to close the public hearing.
Second.
It's been moved by Beth Reed, seconded by Brian Zowen. Is there any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Reed?
Aye.
Sauer?
Aye.
Bozeman?
Aye.
Disharu?
Aye.
Holzhauser? Aye. Humbles? Aye. Blue? Aye.
Motion carries. Next, we have a public hearing for the FY19 tentative budget. Could I have a motion to open the public hearing?
I move to open the public hearing for the full year 19 tentative budget.
Second.
It's been moved by Teresa Holzhauser, seconded by Beth Reed. Is there any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Holzhauser? Aye. Reed?
Aye.
Disharu?
Aye.
Humbles? Aye. Sauer?
Aye.
Blue?
Aye.
Bozeman?
Aye. Okay, the motion carries. Is there anyone who would like to address the board regarding the FY19 tentative budget? Okay, let the record show that no one addressed the board. Could I please have a motion to close the hearing?
I move to close the public hearing.
Second.
It's been moved by Beth Reed, seconded by Brian Zowen. Is there any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Reed?
Aye.
Sauer?
Aye.
Holzhauser? Aye. Humbles? Aye. Blue? Aye. Bozeman?
Aye.
Disharu?
Aye. Okay, motion carries. Next, we will move on to the public participation portion of the meeting. Mr. Merker will present information regarding FOIA requests.
We had 5 FOIA requests this month. 2 of those, 3 of those actually were commercial in our view. A request for employees' names and email addresses, a second request for purchasing records, a third request for vendor contracts. Then we had 2 requests from the Journal Star, one for invoices from our attorney firms, which we did fulfill, and a second request for correspondence, which was denied due to the correspondence being an exception of the Freedom of Information Act. So those were our 5 requests for this month.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we'll move on to public comments. Is there anyone who wishes to address the board? If so, please raise your hand. Okay. This concludes the public participation portion of the meeting. The board will now move on to action items. First action item is approval of bids DDMS expansion projects. The bid results for the DDMS expansion project are included in the board packet. Are there any questions? Okay. Pete, would you like to give us an update? For a minute or so? Sure.
We took these bids last week on Tuesday, and we had roughly 4.7, it was $4,768,316 worth of bids over 13 bid items. What we considered the critical bid items, and they came in $161,579 under budget, for a total under budget project tally at the moment, not including the contingency we set up with the budget originally. We're $232,500 under budget. So that plus the contingency is the fat that's in the job at the moment. And then we have a third bid package that was supposed to be out like next week and bid before the next board meeting. Those items are all the finishes. The architect and I sat and discussed that and said that it's better if we postpone it because the 4th of July week's coming in. and contractors won't give it a whole lot of consideration, and they said it'd give them a little more time to drill down on color patterns and things like that. So I think what we will do, we will bring those approval letters, or the approval letter to the August meeting. Listen, July. Yeah, August meeting, okay? And so far, we have done storm work. All 3 building pads for the class additions have been built up. The foundations and some of the underground is in for the first building pad, or the wing A, and it goes A, E, and D, and then G is the gymnasium. So if everything works out the way we think it will, we should be done with the additions by early spring, not June, and which I think is outstanding. We got some very, very good contractors. I even brought a copy of the bid results for all the people who bid, et cetera. If you're wanting a copy of that, I'll be happy to hand it to you. But typically, our approval letters will put in the budget and the bidder, and then you're going to see some differences in there in a couple of them. But it doesn't necessarily mean we misbudgeted. We never guarantee a budget line item. We're always pretty much saying that the bottom line of the project is the sweet spot of every project. So overall, I was very pleased with everything, and that's the toughest part of the job is right here is this bid package. So I'm thrilled that it came in under budget, and certainly a privilege to be your construction manager on this project again too.
Great.
Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions?
No, just one comment. So builder's risk on the project, we need to get that policy at some point.
Yep. Everybody else's insurance is in, and,
Right.
things are all
Good deal.
Great. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Could I have a motion to approve the bids?
I move to approve bid package 2 for the DVMS expansion project in the amount of $4,606,737 as presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Beth Reese, seconded by Brian Dowling. Is there any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Reed.
Aye.
Allen.
Aye.
Humbles. Aye. Blue. Aye. Bozeman. Aye. Disharu.
Aye.
Olshausen. Aye.
Okay, the motion carries. That concludes this portion of the action items. We'll now move on to the information discussion items. School activity account reports are included in the board packet. Are there any questions? Information regarding the high school random drug testing for the month of May is included in the board packet. Are there any questions?
So I just have a quick question. Katie, or what do we test for? I noticed we have that contract coming up, but what exactly are we testing for? Because I know there's an addendum to add on alcohol and some others from the original. Do we know exactly what we're testing kids for?
Yes, but I'm not going to, from memory, I won't be able to remember everyone, but I know it's marijuana, opiates, amphetamines.
Do we test for the alcohol too, or no?
No.
That was just an addition, but we're not using that.
That is not on our current.
Gotcha. Okay.
And the threshold for marijuana, do you happen to know what it is?
0.3, whatever the measurement
Okay.
is. I don't know what that stands for, but I do know that it's 0.3.
And it looked like there was another addendum for Adderall or something. We don't do any of that.
That would be an amphetamine.
But there's a secondary portion on that contract that said that. Anyway, I didn't know if it was another.
That's not listed on ours.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just the amphetamine.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Information regarding the DHS band overnight stay in Carbondale is included in the board packet. Are there any questions? Information regarding the renewal of the Pepsi contract is included in the board packet. Are there any questions?
I did have a few questions on that, and Jack did address some of them. Maybe Dawn or Beth would know this. Is this something that we want to go out and see if we can competitively bid, see if there's other opportunities for us to negotiate with other companies, or just want to know what everybody's thoughts were on that? It's a multi-year contract for 5 years.
And if we don't have, if it's not time sensitive, it's a relatively routine process to bid things like that, right?
Gina, so can we, for the next meeting, I'd just like to know our spend, our annual spend, what we pay Pepsi for that.
And I think you
and what the
would
revenue,
that,
there's some
right.
commission back.
Right.
In addition to the $8,000 annually that we get on a grant or whatever, but it'd be nice to know what the commission is that we received in revenue, and then what's our actual overall spend. I don't know.
Didn't you add that to the packet?
I think she did.
She did.
The overall spend is in there?
I think that was late ad.
Right.
Oh, I didn't see that. How much?
Yeah, the overall spend was, when we take a look at what the financial summary was, for not the annual scholarship, but the rebates estimated on the case, based on the 3,126 cases that were sold, okay? And that's what he's estimating it on. I want to make sure that that was, you know, a good number and not just something like, well, this is really something you can work for. If you work really hard, you can get this kind of money. And back to me, and actually, he was within 7 cases. Our cases last year were 3,133 that were sold. So, you know, that rebate of $3 per case, the number he has in there of 93.78 is pretty doggone close to what we would be. You know, provided everything stays the same, you know, as far as consumption.
And so these numbers where the annual sponsorship dropped from 10,000 per year to 8,000, is that just with this contract, or had that happened previously?
That actually happened previously, because when I asked Stacy to go back and pull that information from last year, we received that annual contribution in August. So I would expect, you know, if this were to go forward, I would expect, you know, you would expect that in August. Last August, it was at 8,000 already. I asked about why that was, and that simply was the response was that they can no longer sell as many products as they used to in the schools, and so due to restrictions, their sales have gone down, and as a result, some of their contributions have as well.
Would you be opposed to having it bid out?
I wouldn't be opposed, no. Yeah, if that's what the board wants.
What's the normal, do we have a threshold for amounts that we bid out for? Yeah, what?
I mean, as far as
like we
the
normally
contribution?
For bidding.
For bidding. We usually bid out when it's over a certain amount, don't we? Am I dreaming that?
No, I remember something.
There's it's two different numbers. It's 25 or 50,
Okay.
just depending on how you read the school code. So it's 25 or 50.
What you do is RFP.
And what is
Yeah,
this?
RFP would be
Yeah.
appropriate.
What
for
amount
this.
is this?
Well, right now it's 90.
This one, total for the 5 years would be at the 95, so you're talking 40,000 a year.
40,000 a year.
No, not 40,000.
Oh.
That was just the annual sponsorship, yeah. 95,
Divided by 4.
yeah.
But I'm confused. The 95 is the money they're paying us, is it not?
Right.
Those are,
But you would like to know what we spend, what we pay them.
You're right.
Right. And that's what I've got in my notes.
So
I
yeah,
can
so
give
that's
you
the
that
number,
figure
just
out.
annually, we need to know if we're spending 25 grand, which we probably are. If we're getting rebates of 20 grand a year, right? We're gonna get, so I gotta assume we're paying more than 25.
it's not a difficult thing to bid out. You could base it on this kind of formatting. Use an estimated amount of cases of different products, and the different companies will be able to provide us an RFP, or if we bid it, I mean, that's a semantics thing, but it's not a difficult thing to put together.
We might as well.
So do
Yeah,
we
make
have
sure.
time to go out and bid out at this point for the contract end, or do we need an extension, or?
Well, I think if you take a look at what your timeline is, and I'd have to see when they were expecting this back, but you know, I had it set up for this month being the information, next month being the action. I think you have time to go out between now and the next board meeting to bid it out and come back with a recommendation for action.
Yeah, and I agree with Teresa. I think because it's a 5-year contract, I think just to keep everybody honest and to make sure we're getting the district the best deal, that we absolutely should bid it out. And I think we even should consider, do we do 5 years? You know, is there an advantage for us to go 5 years out? Or is there more shopping to do, maybe 3 years perhaps? I guess whatever the best practice is. But certainly I think bidding it out, because it probably does it overreaches that $25,000 threshold.
I think, Dawn, that's an unknown as to whether it's better to go 3 or 5. I don't know how I base
Well,
that.
that'll depend on them.
I
They'll
think
come back with those
the
numbers.
5 has been pretty typical.
Yeah,
That's true.
probably get better rates at 5.
And
but,
so
you know,
can our
let's find
staff,
out.
can do this? We don't have to have an attorney?
No.
Okay.
Has it ever been bid out before?
I don't think so. I think we've been using Pepsi
I think they
for
pretty
as
much bid
long-
out everything over 25,000.
But I don't
There
think,
was some kind of bidding process for it.
So this is
I mean, I
under,
couldn't
so
get
that's
it.
why
I'd
probably
have to
why
go
we
back and
haven't
look,
done it,
yeah.
because it's been under.
we've never,
Probably over.
I mean, especially if you're talking 5 years.
It's not that you can't do it, you know, and like I say, if that's a desire, we go ahead and do it. Most districts I've been in, they just roll it over.
Roll it over.
Yeah.
But I mean, we're losing, you know.
There's
I mean, they dropped it from
potential,
10,000 to 8,000, so it might drop from 8 to 6, so we might want some room in there to renegotiate if necessary, if we're losing, you know. Because I'm sure we're spending the same amount, if not more, every year. We're growing, so we probably need to relook at that.
Yeah. So go ahead and look at that and have, get back to us in a couple of weeks, and then we will get that in email form, and then we can decide at the next meeting.
Okay, any other questions about that? Comments? Okay. Information regarding the district office facilities included in the board packet. Mr. Merker will address this issue.
We talked about that at length last time, and the notes that I've given you, I think, are pretty self-explanatory. The option is always there if you choose to go down that line. Just be aware of the dates, and Dr. Dearman is aware of the dates of renewing the contract and all that.
Okay. Any questions? Information regarding policy revisions is included in the board packet. Are there any questions or discussion regarding any of the revisions?
Did the policy committee meet? Do you have anything to update us on?
We did not meet, but they will need to meet.
Right.
These are perfunctory.
Yeah.
Okay, so nothing
Not at all.
special, okay, thank you.
Okay. Information regarding Press Plus and online school board policy services from IASB is included in the packet for the board's consideration. The policy committee has previously reviewed this information. Cheryl or Beth, you want to share your thoughts on this information?
Well, I
Press
think
Plus.
school this size, I think it would be, and as we grow, I just think it would be nice to have, actually. It does cost more, but in the long run, I think it might be worth it that we have, and we can tailor.
It provides the cross-referencing so that you can make sure that all your when one policy.
Yeah, our other one does too. You just have to know how to get into the IASB website and work it. But this just goes a little further, I believe, with the legalness of it, that it's double-checked and triple-checked.
I know it becomes an issue when there's an issue. Otherwise, we go through these policies and press, recommends things, and they have their staff attorneys that make the recommendations, such as what we're making the changes in those board policies. But if everything doesn't match, every once in a while we, over the years have added policies particular to our district and to make sure everything is cross-referenced. And it's a big job to make sure that everything is updated. And for us, we get them, but we have to print them out, we have to update our books, and I have to say it's a real struggle, for me, so that we will always have a reference where you get right online, and the public can too. So there's a transparency factor in that I think is really important.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments? Is anybody, are we all supportive of this?
Looks like they have a pretty good list of clients of schools. Pretty comprehensive statewide.
Okay.
Yes.
So we'll add that as an action item for next month.
Are we talking about doing both the Press Plus and the online policy services at the same time?
I think so.
I think so.
Everybody okay with that?
Great.
Okay. Very good. Information regarding the hourly employee wage guidelines is included in the board packet. Mr. Merker will address this item.
Hourly wage guidelines was a name of a document that used to go out to our classified staff, and it would list classified staff that were hired in at various time sections. And it became confusing for our classified staff because many of them saw that as a salary schedule, and it was not a salary schedule. So we've met with several employees, Jack and I have met with several employees that thought those were salary schedules and thought that they should be moving to some other level. Well, that's just not the design of that. So I think my goal here is to clarify all of this for everyone and to basically just say, effective with the next meeting, this would be an action item I would propose for you at the next meeting. Effective with the next meeting, any of the previous hourly wage guidelines or quote salary schedules that were out there for the classified staff are null and void. We verify everyone's salary from that point on, which will be something that will be easy to run. This is your correct salary as of today. And then from that point on, it simply goes to whatever the board decides to vote for classified staff or salary increase. I did put into notes the 2 ways that the minutes read for the last 2 years for our classified staff. Well, that's what happens. I mean, you make a decision as to what the raise is going to be for all the classified staff, and as a board, if you want to have a 20% increase for classified staff, you make that vote. If you want to have a 20% decrease for class, you make that vote. It can go however the board chooses to do. There are no salary schedules, and I think that is, well, I don't think, I know, that is the point of this document, so that everyone is aware that here's where we are and move forward from there.
I think that's a great idea. Does anyone have any questions or objections? Okay, great, thank you. Information regarding board policy 660 is included in the board packet for discussion. Mr. Merker will address this item.
We started off on 660 with PE. We talked about it a little bit last board meeting. There were other questions that came up, and I emailed to the board some question and answer, just a FAQ kind of thing of questions that came up. Some of them were just some that came to my mind randomly, but others were in discussion. So here's a question, here was a response, and there were benefits to 3-day-a-week PE. There were negatives to 3-day-a-week PE. So we basically are at a point of, we're still talking about 3-day-a-week PE. Since that time, we've had in the last Press Plus come forth a recommendation in regards to cursive writing, which is also in policy 6.60. Well, if we're going to do 6.60, I would propose that you gather with Dr. Dearman and the policy committee and talk about cursive writing. Heather will want to bring in some folks to talk about cursive writing from the elementary level, and maybe even older, depending. But she'll want to bring in folks and have a discussion. So you may as well get PE and cursive writing and the revision of 6.60 all at the same time. Now, that said, PE is still on the table, and if there is strong opinion either way on PE, that could be addressed separately, and you could address cursive writing at a later time. So if you remember the email that I sent to you, there are options for us at this point in regards to PE. As far as this fall, there are no real options for practical implementation for this fall.
And if we would establish a policy allowing a 3-day PE, it would be just that. It would just allow it to happen. We wouldn't have to change the way we practice.
That's correct. That was the way the School Board Association recommended in the original press, the wording to read to allow three.
At least 3 days.
At least 3 days. Thank you.
I think it's how the press.
Thank you.
But logistically, it's not something that we can do to change the schedule for next year, so we do have time.
You have time, but then if you want to go down that line, you have the option, but you'll have to get at that fairly quickly, I would think, in the fall, make a decision so that there can be some planning and implementation from there for the following year at whatever grade levels you would choose to go at that.
I also know at the policy meeting, there was a concern that there was a Senate bill that passed requiring 5 days a week PE.
But it didn't make it.
It didn't get traction?
Yeah.
Okay, I was wondering about the status of that.
It was close, but it didn't make it.
So what are everybody's thoughts? Would we like to separate, first of all, do we want to separate these two issues for consideration or deal with them as one?
Personally, I'd like to see it addressed, both items addressed, especially the cursive, sooner than later.
In a separate action or together?
I think the way it was phrased, I thought he said to address cursive at a later time.
Oh, I think she's planning on July.
I think we would, as soon as Dr. Dearman started, we want to get a policy committee meeting together in July.
Right.
Yes. I would love to be able to bring some information even at the July board meeting if possible.
Great, thank you.
So should we just lump them together as I think you recommended?
Heather, do you have a preference?
I'm fine leaving them together. That's not a problem. I mean, if we're gonna talk about the policy, I feel like we might as well take a look at everything in it.
Okay, everybody okay with that? Okay. Any other comments at this point? Okay, thank you. Information regarding the request to review the lacrosse fees is included in the board packet. The board will entertain discussion at this time. Abby, you want to begin? Since you offered this item?
Well, I think we have discussed this numerous times, and I know that at the time that we initially had considered lacrosse, we were told that there wasn't enough money in the budget to do band uniforms and lacrosse, and we needed to choose between the two. Further review of the budget, and now knowing that is not an issue per se, the fact that parents have paid 1 year for lacrosse, this is going, this is an IHSA sport, just like any other sport. It's just very unusual not to have the school treat it like any other sport in the district. When you take on a sport such as lacrosse or wrestling or whatever it may be, it's proven itself. We have enough people on the team. I just feel that we shouldn't continue to make students who are interested in lacrosse pay an extra fee. I think it's a hardship for some students who might be interested that couldn't afford to be participant in lacrosse. So I just ask that we consider that either a gradual lowering of the fee or just to make it in line with the rest of the sports.
I just want to follow up, kind of echo what Abby said. When we had this discussion last year about this time, it was the information presented to the board was that this year's budget, we had to pick between band uniforms and lacrosse, was a $40,000 number. And we didn't have a lot of room this year. And Jack, I think it looks like our surplus this year is going to be positive to 1.5 to 2 million. So that was the premise behind it. And so that's why the lacrosse parents were going to fund it, because it was going to be tight money-wise and they wanted this program. So the information budget turned out to be not accurate for whatever reason. It sounds like expenses were just projected higher than came in at, because revenues are the same. So I agree with that.
Any other comment? Oh,
Can I interject? I have a couple of things. Skipping down to the next agenda item, and then I have one of my own. So let me go to my own first. On the fees, the overall fee schedule that you approved in March, I made an error on the lunch prices. And the document that I had, that I was working on, had the wrong lunch prices in it for the current year. Well, I drug them forward, so drug forward bad data. So it's going to take action by you on fees next month to get that correct, to get it to the right level. And it's like a dime higher lunch. It's not big, but my mistake. So you're going to have to take action next month somehow on those fees alone, if nothing else. That said, Teresa has submitted 2 additional future agenda items that are both related to these 2 topics that we just discussed here together. One was in relationship to the marching band uniforms. It talks to the same thing of the discussion that Brian referenced of, is it marching band uniforms or is it lacrosse, and et cetera, et cetera. And there are approximately 30 to 40 uniforms that she has requested us to consider purchasing for the marching band, which would be in the $13,000 to $17,000 range. The second agenda item that Teresa's requested is review of all school-related fees, including a review of all fees that were initiated during the budget deficit, currently 50-plus fees, not including technology or activity fees. So this all plays in together. You have to take action on lunch prices next month. You just have to. The other things you can do, your call, you can do how you want. You can have an information next month, have the discussion, take action in August. I think for this coming year, we are pretty far down the line of student fees. I'm not sure that we can, well, I'm pretty sure we can't, again, make a change at this point for this upcoming year. But we can set a fee schedule up in the next months that would be the 1920 fee schedule that could show reductions, that could show increases, that could show changes, that could show whatever you all cooperatively decide as a group. So one action has to take place next month. You got to approve lunch prices that I messed up on. The other actions can be still a discussion, because I think we're talking about the 1920 school year, at least for the fee.
For the fees, that's what
for the fee side.
It's 1920.
And the band uniforms could be a separate item. Does that all make sense?
It does, and I think with the band uniforms, they only did half, is that correct? Or
No,
only did varsity?
they only did the varsity band.
Right.
They did not do the cadet band.
So
We
in-
did 2/3 of it, right? We spent $35,000.
It's about, right, and the band, yeah, and they used 5,000 of their own funds to.
Well, I would think it would be fair that if we could maybe even consider that for this coming school year, as far as looking at all the fees that.
I had that
will
for the
take time.
1920, we can't do
Yes,
anything this year.
But I think it would be fair to consider both that and the price.
So why couldn't we reduce fees? Why couldn't we do it for this year?
Well, we're already registering kids and the
were
fees are
behind
being
the eight
paid.
ball.
It's already
correct?
been done, right? They've already
Yeah,
registered.
We've already budgeted.
Right.
Yeah.
We
You
can't
don't
do
want
it.
to get into
Refunds.
rebating and,
Yeah, and I appreciate that there's actually a future agenda item on that, because I would support the reduction in fees, because I know that we cover students, free and reduced lunch if they want to do a sport, but you've got that, middle income group there that wouldn't qualify for that, but it might be a stretch if you have 4 kids and paying $400. So as long as we've got the budget, surplus, we aren't in the same crunch that we were then. But to look at how, the band had to pay for some of their own uniforms in that situation too, that doesn't seem. But also to look at other sports that pay for their own equipment and their own uniforms. I think about swimming, and that was a significant amount of money for the suits, practice, the competition suits, the hats, and they had to buy their own equipment. So I think we kind of want to be equitable across the board.
So even cheerleading, they have several
Yeah.
outfits.
Cheerleading is not an IASA sport,
still
though,
a
it's
sport.
separate. Oh, it is, I know, I write that
It's
checker,
still an activity
IHSA, yeah.
that- yeah.
But, so we don't, we own it, but we
I think it'd be
don't.
really difficult to do that for every sport personally, but maybe.
For next the coaches would be able to tell you.
Well, but again, I have to agree with Karen. It gets into tennis. A tennis racket costs $150 to $200, depending on. And so, when you're talking about providing your own equipment, that's really a fine line, right?
Right, except for lacrosse equipment is provided by the school.
No, that's not correct.
Oh, it isn't?
No.
I thought we moved to.
The sticks are all the kids buy their own sticks. Yeah.
What was
And donated. I think they donated a lot of equipment. Yeah.
So didn't we?
And it's really
$50,000 to get
expensive.
it set up?
But it varies, even within a
No, the
sport.
lacrosse didn't. They funded the whole entire
They buy their own hard equipment, their helmets and stuff like that.
pads.
And their disposable stuff like any other sport would do, like Brian talked about. They pay for their hard equipment too, their helmets, their pads.
Okay, so then the school.
We had extra money to pay for travel and tourism fees and all that, and coaching stipends was another one that we had to pay for.
Didn't they donate some money to, didn't the association?
Officials, yeah, everything, all that stuff was, the cost of doing business was what we paid for.
Okay, and if I just want to, and I guess, there was never an attempt to be inequitable amongst the sports and amongst students. From my memory, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, was that there was a struggle between whether we were in a place to take lacrosse to an IHSA level, being the first, school to do that in this area. And with that, it was brought to us, right, as a challenge, almost like, hey, under these conditions, would you consider it? And the conditions that were brought to us said that each family of each student was willing to pay the $350 to help support it, because they knew it was expensive. They knew that we would be the only school in the area that would have a lacrosse team, so competition would then require travel up north, if I'm not mistaken, towards the Chicago area, overnight stays and everything that comes with that. And so it was a little bit different, so it wasn't as if there was ever, we were looking at it as, oh, this is separate and these kids are gonna have to pay more because this is a special sport. It was very much brought to us in a package deal. And that deal included each student paying $350 and the fact that they were going to go back and fundraise for $4,000 or more and bring it into the school, because they knew that they wanted to push it forward quicker than the district was possibly able to allow. Now, it's okay for us to go back and say that, you know, the budget's changed and there's more money now there than we thought, but I think we can only tell that story so many times before the bank runs dry. And so I would like to see everybody take a look at all the things that were discussed. We got emails from parents in swimming. We've heard about the fees that are paid for cheerleading. We've talked about some of the other sports that are included, and just take a full look at it. Because I keep hearing different board members say, oh, well, you know, the money, there's more of a surplus than we thought there was, so let's spend it on this, let's spend it on that. I think we need to be more constructive, and there needs to be a strategy to this. Because we can't just be throwing money at this one and throwing money at that one, and you're right, the band had been waiting before, and there was a struggle. And so I guess, in my mind, the thing would have been to wait and have a full year of lacrosse, or fees. Let's at least have a full year of what it takes to support this program before we can then make adjustments to what was brought to us and then was agreed to. So I feel like there's a little bit of struggle of information here. It's not as if we were charging this amount of money. This package was brought to us by the parents saying, hey, if we can be an IHSA sport, we'll pay $350, we'll do this, we'll do that, we'll fundraise. And so now to kind of turn the table, and we haven't even had a full year to look at the data and see what the costs truly are of the travel, of the expenses. I think we're premature, and that we need to take our time and, you know, allow Mrs. Casler to look at that with the coaches, with the sports, and then if there's money there and we can lessen it across the board. To Teresa's point, there are things that were taken away during the deficit that we've not even made whole yet. And so before we go and say, oh, we got money for this and money for that, and I've just heard it a couple times over the last several meetings, I think that, you know, you can only spend that bank so many times before it's gone. So I just think we need to be very constructive, and I appreciate everyone's comments, and whatever we can do for the best interest of our students, I'm absolutely for that. That being said, I think we need to take our time and take a look at it before we keep moving the fees around as a gesture. Let's figure out where we are, and by all means, if there's any student that wants to participate, the school district will cover that. And to your point, Cheryl, about if you're free and reduced, obviously you would be covered for that. Even if you're in that middle bracket where you're not quite free and reduced and you're having trouble, there's no qualification. You come to the district and that child will participate in the sport. So that student would be covered as well. So I just think we need to make sure we're looking at everything before we start making changes. And so, like, you know, Mr. Merker said, the fees have already been paid. We can look at that along with all these other things that are out there before we start designating money in one direction to a specific group. Let's look across the board and make sure we're keeping the best interest of all of our students in mind before we make any final decisions.
So I just want to recap a little bit so everyone's accurate for the record. What the previous board president and administration a year ago presented at a meeting here, that they did not want to approve IHSA lacrosse because it was a $40,000 either band or uniform, band
50 actually,
or lacrosse. The board president at the time and the administrator made that recommendation to not approve IHSA lacrosse. Then the parents of those lacrosse players, since it's been a club for 6 years, they've been funding this program for over 6 years, right? Is that right? 6 years, 7 years? Personally funding it, they were able to say, look, we'll go ahead and fund it since there's apparently no money and the school's not going to move forward with it. We will step up to the plate and we'll fund it and fundraise a bunch of money. So that was the premise behind it, because we were told, this board, we had to pick, because the budget was so tight with $40,000. In retrospect, in talking to Randy or Jack, we're going to possibly have up to a $2 million surplus this year, and it's not because we had new revenues come in. The information came in not accurate for what was presented, and I think the lacrosse parents stepped up to the plate, paid for this year, and we have all this money that they were told that's the reason we need to do it. So just to set the record straight, that's all went down.
I think that record is wrong. That record is wrong. If you're referring to me, you can use the name. I was the prior board president, and no, there was no discussion about we're not going to approve lacrosse from the board president and administration. The board president and administration at that time listened to who they should have listened to, who would have been the athletic committee, who reviewed lacrosse and said we're not ready to take it forward yet. And they said we're not ready to take it forward yet, and board members such as Brian Zalman, who has a child that plays lacrosse, who had a conflict of interest, who should have recused himself, and said, I'm not going to vote on this, I'm not going to push it, because I have a student that is actively in lacrosse, took it on forward and kind of shoved it through the throats of the people that were there. So if you want to put the record straight, if you want to go there, we'll go there.
Conflict of interest, all of us school board members have many conflicts of interest up here today. I just want to say, and the board president here was pursuing the basketball issue this year. So we all have conflicts all the time, whether it's hiring a teacher, principal, sports, we all have, with it's Spanish or what. So I want to say, you can't just pick one item out. So if you've had a child in basketball and you're involved in a basketball situation, you can't cast stones like that.
No,
okay, how about we get, I'd like to get the recommendation.
The point being made is, but wait one second, Karen. When you want to clarify and try to adjust the record, you have to use the facts as they exist.
We have the facts.
And so there's no email.
We'll go back to the minutes. I do have that.
What I can tell you that if you bring that athletic committee and set them right here at this table, they will tell you that they were not for lacrosse. And this gentleman who's a board member did not agree with that, and they pretty much got silenced. So I will tell you that this is the reason why you put things like this in the hands of the athletic committee, who are unbiased, who work for, who sit there amongst their parents, their experts, they have kids who are in sports. They can have an objective opinion about things like this, unlike a board member who's trying to push things through and has the power to somewhat do that behind the scenes. This is why we do that. And so why we wouldn't listen to that athletic committee? If they felt that it was not the right time and they had looked at the data, why wouldn't we go with that? Do you refute that at all?
Actually, I'm going to add a clarification. So the athletic committee did meet, and here is their minutes right here, and they say, provided the school board has the funds to both reinstate operational budgets of existing sports, which we did. At the last meeting.
We did.
And add lacrosse on proposed teams. So there you go. Then they asked for just to review, to make sure that it was we're still playing up to level, and that students still want to play.
Yeah, there's a lot there, Beth, that you're not reading.
No.
So you want to? It's right
there's
here.
There's a lot there that you're not reading.
It's highlighted too for you, Dawn.
Okay. How about
let's move forward.
I would like to get.
I suggest to just go forward with the next meeting.
I'd like Randy's recommendation. Do you have a recommendation on this?
Yeah. So anyway, if anybody wants to read this, they can forward you the information from the athletic committee, or go find someone who sat on that committee. But I'm not here to dispute this. But when you want to come back against and you want to make accusations, you got to know it's coming back your way. And they did not. They should not add lacrosse or any other sport until it's sufficient funds to reinstate the operational budgets of existing sports programs.
Which we did.
Which would include IHSA ban and everything else. And this is from 20.
It was the sports fees.
From 2013 to 2014, and I don't think anybody has fully looked at that. And until even after they had questions.
We
make no mistake.
Those fees.
I'm okay.
Yeah, we reinstated the fees.
But this is recent.
So moving forward, let's do this. There's lots to talk about, but let's go forward and take a look what Teresa recommended.
First of all, I just wanted to get Randy's recommendation.
If you're just looking at lacrosse in isolation, and let's leave Teresa's recommendation for future agenda items for the next item. This particular item, on item K on the agenda, is a discussion of lacrosse fees. And I think I've said this in the last meeting, and I'll say it again. If we're going to have lacrosse, let's own it. Let's use lacrosse and fund lacrosse as we do all the rest of the sports. That's it. If we're not going to treat them the same, or if the sport doesn't make, meaning there's not enough kids, okay, well then phase it out and it'll be gone. But if you're going to have this activity, let's support it like we do everything else. That would be my recommendation.
Okay, and so what I suggest is, can we have one item for the lacrosse fee, one item for the band uniform fee?
I agree.
Actually, you need to go through the process for the future agenda items. Make sure everybody wants, I'm sure they will, but make sure everybody wants those on there.
Okay.
I would suggest the next meeting approval for the lacrosse fees at the same fees as everyone else.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Everybody okay?
We can go ahead and agree to put these on.
Put these on. Would everybody agree to put those on?
Yes,
as
absolutely.
information items?
Absolutely.
And then lacrosse will move to an action item since it's already been an information item.
And what I'm just to clarify what I was saying, lacrosse fees should be in line with all the rest of the sports. If they're paying a $100 fee, all the rest of, actually we reduced it to 90, didn't we? So if they're paying a $90 fee, then lacrosse kids should be paying a $90 fee. should be the rest of sports.
Yep, agreed.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, so we'll have an action item for lacrosse next month. We'll have 2 information items for the agenda items that Teresa brought forth.
Oh, those are the only 2.
Yeah, so that's my next question. Information regarding their requests for future agenda items is included in the board packet. Those are the only 2. We're going to add those as information items.
You should ask for other future agenda items.
Are there any?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh.
Yes, there are.
I thought they were turned in.
Let me just read this off. Agenda item request for review, achievement gap information criteria for the U.S. News and World Report, high school ranking. Important to ensure we address the needs of all our students, ensure that we address the achievement gap among students, and review follow-up regularly. Entire district will progress as achievement gap is closed. So Dawn's request is a review of the U.S. News and World Report high school ranking and how that process, right? Mm-hmm. And Heather and I have had some discussion on that already, and that sounds like certainly an appropriate item.
Okay.
Pass that down.
All right, so this goes on next month as well. Or is that?
Assuming that the whole board is
Sure.
on board with
Do you think it's an item that we should consider for information item?
Yeah, if you want to know more information about it, we'd be happy to gather that and take a look at it. I mean, I just got a administrator Kathy today on
Okay.
ESSA and everything coming forward, so it all kind of
Fits
has
in
to
well
get.
together. Right.
Okay.
One thing to keep in mind with that ranking is that's based on 15, 16 data. They're 2 years behind when they make those rankings.
Oh,
It takes some
wow.
time to compile that.
Okay.
So we'd love it to be real-time data, give you instant feedback, but as you know, we thought it was a year behind, we didn't know it was 15, 16.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That was a surprise to all of us.
And it'd be great to be able to compare that, the data that they use compared to where we are today. You know, because hopefully it'll show that we've,
Yeah,
we've
there
made
are 5
some
steps
moves in that
that you
direction.
go through that are easy to understand.
One of the problems with doing that, Dawn, is even if we get our current test scores and our current data, we don't know the rest of the matrix. And they won't share the rest of the matrix because they don't want schools to try to set up so that they make it. So even if we get our current data, we won't even know what the next step is in the comparison from year to year. So that'll be a little challenging, but they can certainly go through how this occurred.
Right, because we made it all the other times.
You guys could compare to share with us.
The first step in the process,
Yeah, first
right?
step, that way you just take a
Right.
step back.
Okay. Any other comments or questions on that? Okay, this concludes the information discussion item segment of the meeting. We'll now move on to the consent agenda. Are there any clarifications or discussion regarding items on the consent agenda? Okay, could I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Teresa Holthauser, seconded by Cheryl Bluth. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Holzhauser.
Aye.
Blue.
Aye.
Reed.
Aye.
Bowen.
Aye.
Bozeman.
Aye.
Disharum.
Aye.
Almost. Aye.
Okay, the motion carried. We will now move on to additional action items. The bill list, treasurer's report, and district investment report are included in the board packet. Are there any questions?
Jack, can you comment a little bit about meeting with Schwab, Charles Schwab, how that went on our investments?
We did have a meeting with the Charles Schwab representatives, which was, we found it to be extremely valuable. Because coming in January, there was just this nebulous account and trying to get information, and it wasn't really easy because I could not get on until sometime in March, and therefore I couldn't get a lot of information. But did work through that with them, and so they provided us with some interesting information. They talked with me early on about whether or not we wanted to have, look at having someone to help manage the account. And of course, our first response is, well, how much does that cost? And at that time, the cost was about $80,000 to manage that kind of account. But when we take a look, one of the things we learned, when we take a look at when specific items mature, they don't call and tell us that. They don't call and tell us it's going to mature. They don't give us, okay, so if we find out that it matures and we call them, We're not going to get a whole lot of guidance in terms of, well, we think this is, a good thing that you should put your money toward, this is not a good thing, and so those kinds of things were really interesting for us to know. We did also have, Damon Hackett was there at the meeting, so it was really good for him to have that information coming in. They also shared with us that their management fees could go down as low as $40,000. So from the 80 down to 40, which is intriguing, so, and to be able to have some better guidance from the Schwab folks. So that's just in a quick synopsis, in a nutshell, what we learned. A lot of our holdings are in bonds.
And are there any holdings that cause you concern, or because I know in the past there was some that didn't meet state criteria that we were out of, but do you have some that cause you concern as it?
Yeah, I think there may be like a couple that we want to make sure that they have a good backing on them. Now we were assured that these are all government backed and they're all good. Okay, but still assurance, and then okay, how really assured am I? So that's that piece that's always out there. Okay, you assured me, but really tell me, how much further do we need to dig into this to get that assurance until we step on. But that, in a synopsis, Randy, I don't know if you want to add anything else to it.
I'm just thinking of the list of companies that they gave to us. They gave us a list of companies and said, well, if you invested in these AA or A bonds with all of these different companies, you could have done this in earnings. And on the list, you see Anheuser-Busch. Yeah, no. But also on that, it was companies. They were company A and AA bonds. And even if they were solid company, Pepsi-Cola or PepsiCo or whatever, solid company, it's still a company. It's not a fully guaranteed product. Makes me a little nervous. I'm a little old-fashioned and like the things to be, fully backed. So I'm not sure if the Schwab management piece would be a good idea. But if we give them a specific set of guidelines to follow, you can invest in this, and that, then that could be of use.
But we're looking at 10-year treasuries are almost paying 3% now. So we could put all our money in that, and at $20 million, that's $600,000 of interest per year on a guaranteed, and you can't get any better backing than 10-year treasury.
We did a little rough math that Jack and I were doing. We were thinking, okay, can we make enough in the Schwab account that we can pull out enough to pay for X, whatever X might be, which might be teacher increases, which might be this project, which might be this special thing. The problem with that is you can do that annually, but if you think about something like salary increases, remember how those stair step. If you have $100,000 of salary increase this year and pull out $100,000 to take care of that, and then next year you have another 100, well now you need to pull out 2. And that doesn't, we don't think there's enough money in the Schwab account that generates enough revenue to cover that stair stepping over time. It would probably be able to cover it for, but I'm not sure long term that would work. That makes sense.
But it's a good situation to have to be able to draw on that money if your EAVs go flat.
If you get into bad economic times, you have significant money there that comes out that you can draw out if needed.
Yeah, interest, and you get the principal you can draw off out if you have to.
And I personally wouldn't touch that money. I'd be working off of the CDs that we are investing and our cash balances that we carry in our checking accounts. We have ample money in there that if times get bad, that you can certainly cover without dipping into the Schwab account. So the question that will lie, and one thing that Damon I'm sure will want to work on further, is looking at the management side of that, and is it worth the money? One point of view might be to try it for a 1-year basis and see if it's worth the money to let Schwab manage it themselves. But the trouble is, what do you compare that to?
Right.
You don't have a basis, you don't have a bottom line to compare it to, because what could we have done if we were managing it ourselves? Tough call.
Right,
Okay.
and so the cost of that, again, would be, you said 80,000, but then there'd be a 40,000 reduction on
40,
something?
yeah.
So would it be
Right,
40
yeah,
net?
They're at 40,000, is
It'd
what
be
they shared with us during our meeting. Pardon? Yes. Wonder how much more?
You know, I recall there being a state of Illinois group for investing. Do you know?
PMA.
Yes, I mean, has.
PMA rates are never
Never.
good. Shouldn't have said that.
It's a safer investment.
Is it on record?
It's lower risk. It's lower risk.
They're lower risk, and they're just not as high rates. In all my years of investing, I never invested with PMA, and only because their rates, and it's their stated rates, simply weren't as high as I could get in our local banks, and I could simply do better.
While we're talking about numbers, maybe it's not specific to this, but I think we were talking about the budget surplus last month. And I think since it's your last meeting, when we asked you last month, would you have some hard numbers this month? Would you be able to tell us where you think we're at? You know, between 500,000 and 2 million?
That's a good range.
That's a good range, yes, yeah, that's a good range.
Yeah, okay. Can you narrow it? Sound good?
We still have a salary and benefit coming out here in June, at the end of June, correct? Right. So while we have most of our revenues in, we don't have all of our expenditures, and we really didn't extend that out.
Okay, so
I can say this, you know, right now, it's still tracking in a very good direction that we've been discussing for the last 3-4 months. So I can say that it's still trending that way.
So maybe an email before you go?
That won't be closed out until the first week of July.
Oh.
But I think from the latest treasurer's report that's in there, you can look at what we've been averaging, and we have basically another payroll coming up this month, right? You have June's already in there.
We got another payroll coming up.
One more payroll, and if you average it, to me, unless there's some crazy expenses out there, we've been averaging about 2.7 in the ed fund, 3 something overall, 4. So overall, I think our whole budget's can be about 4 million in the positive when you include all the different buckets, correct? Something like
I
that.
haven't gone down that far.
You don't want to, if you say all the different buckets, you don't want to drag in the closed funds into that discussion. You just want to stay in the 4 operating funds for that.
So at least it looks like the ed fund to me is somewhere to 1.5, but maybe I'm wrong.
Well, you mentioned there were some other costs that haven't been included. So if you want to shoot us a number.
Sure.
Towards the end.
Give it my best.
Okay.
We won't hold you to it. You won't be around.
Yeah, right. Any other questions about the treasurer's report, district investment report? Okay, thank you very much, Jack. Could I have a motion to approve payment of the bills?
I move to approve payment of the bills in the amount of, let's see, $3,534,263.43 as presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Abby Humble, seconded by Brian Zowen. Is there any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Humbles? Aye. Allen?
Aye.
Blue?
Aye.
Postman? Aye. Sherwood?
Aye.
Houser? Aye. Reed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Information regarding the FY18 amended budget is in the board packet. Are there any questions? Could I have a motion to approve the budget?
I have moved to approve the FY18 amended budget as presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Brian Zowen, seconded by Teresa Holzhauser. Is there any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Allen?
Aye.
Holzhauser? Aye. Blue?
Aye.
Postman? Aye. Disharu?
Aye.
Humbles? Aye. Reed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Information regarding the FY19 tentative budget is in the board packet. Are there any questions? Could I have a motion to approve the budget?
Excuse me, Jack, can you just tell us a little bit about the transportation fund there?
Okay. Transportation fund, you're looking at the difference between revenues and expenditures of having $88,129 more in expenditures than revenues coming in. You have a particular specific question on that, Don, or?
No, just wanted you to brief us on that. I know there was some change in the finances there with the transportation.
The audit?
The audit?
Based on that, yeah, and I just wanted to know how this.
That
this
certainly
is
has, yes, that certainly has an impact on it. But, you know, and when we take a look, and I think it's good to look at each fund, but when we take a look, and you've probably heard Randy and me talk about this, when we take a look at all the operating funds together, that's not bad at all. And so we're in a good position within the operating funds, so we feel very comfortable with that recommendation. And again, this is, keep in mind, this is only your tentative budget. You're going to get another tentative budget in August before you actually approve your final budget in September. And you know, and this is you know, still your early beginning stages. It's not the exact same thing that you presented last month, you know. But that's just kind of the nature of the way things start to roll in. And yes, you know, if we take a look at transportation, sure, that audit would definitely have an impact.
So this reflects paying half of what is owed?
Yes.
Okay.
And just to clarify, this budget going forward is based upon the budget from this year.
Yes.
Not on actuals, which could mean if we do come in at
right.
this.
So when you see this page, this is what goes to the state board. They only want, the state board doesn't really, they're not really looking at our fund balances. They just want to look at our budget, you know, those pieces, all right? So it's kind of like, we know what our fund balances are. And no, we don't want to go through those, you know, because we all know all too well how fast those can go down. But you know, they don't take a look at that. And so if you were to ever adopted a deficit budget, that would be part of your deficit reduction plan, that you would be utilizing some reserves on the spend down for that.
But you had mentioned that there's software that would allow us, financial software that would allow us in future years to do our budget for next year based upon actuals, not on budget, because if this year's budget is off, it means you're carrying that forward with the software. Can you talk about that a little bit?
That would be the Forecast 5, which is where you've seen before the 5-year projections and what those look like. And those, what we have right now, that capability, we don't have the capability to pull that into budgeting per se. The next level would give us that piece. And I've talked with David about it. He's actually going to get some training on that. So I think, you know, that would be an excellent piece for you to have.
Is there an additional cost to that, or is that something we already have and just haven't utilized that piece?
That's another piece to it, so there is an additional cost.
Yeah, any idea what that would cost?
About $8,000.
8,000
Yeah.
a year?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Sure.
Any other questions? Okay, can I please have a motion to approve the budget?
I move to approve FY19 tentative budget as presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Brian Zawin, seconded by Cheryl Bluth. Is there any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Salmon.
Aye.
Bluth. Aye. Bozeman.
Aye.
Disharum.
Aye.
Olshauser. Aye. Humbles.
Aye.
Green.
Aye.
Motion carried. Okay, information regarding the proposed policy 7317, restrictions on signage at extracurricular events, is included in the board packet. Is there any discussion? Okay.
Yes, I just wanted to say, you know, I know we had students speak, we had concerned parents, community members speak on this subject before, and I think the intention is to do what's in the best interest of all of our students with this. And I think Jay Greeny wrote it. I think there has to be discussion. I know last month we talked about the information and the possibility of adding a piece to this discussion, which would be to just remove those signs completely. I know that was one of Jay Greeny's options that he gave us, would just be to move the political signs completely so that we don't run into a problem. And I guess it would be, in my mind, is trying to bring forth a solution that is long-term, you know, as opposed to, you know, just targeting any one specific individual, any one group, just long-term, because I think we've seen it play out in the media and in several other places where districts have had to deal with this. You know, I don't think we've had this question come up in the past. I don't think it's been an issue. And so I think now that it's before us, I think we really have to think, you know, what is the best thing for us to do in the best interest of our students as a whole for the long term. And so I guess that's the piece that I was looking for. And what you have here, Karen, what you have the approval of what Jay Greene presented originally?
It is a motion to approve the policy, yeah, and it's the policy, Randy, that Jay drafted.
That's correct.
Right. And I guess, the option that he gave us that's not in that policy would have been to add the piece about just removing the political piece altogether. And I just wanted to hear the thoughts of others. We brought that forward last time. There was information, now we're here. So that would be a change, obviously, to what's printed, right? So,
right, it would be a change. What do others think?
I said my last time, I'm against any type of censorship or restrictions on students' right to free expression and speech, First Amendment rights.
Okay. I feel the same. I'm not for a policy. Cheryl, Teresa?
Yeah, I'm for a policy. It's something that the administration requested the attorney to draft to address a problem that would help the administrators in making decisions. It fits within the law. It's drafted carefully. It's content neutral. And it was interesting, too, and I said all that before, and I know this isn't a discussion, the information. One thing, though, that I'm all for policy to help guide consistent, ability to make decisions. And actually, Randy, you sent us something about, in your memo, on the Press Plus, your recommendation for the Press Plus and why. And it's applicable to this. You said board policies are the foundation from which the district operates and protects the district from legal issues when in full legal compliance and followed by the administration. So having a policy like we were talking about, it becomes an issue when it becomes an issue. And that's when you want to have a policy that the administration can point to when they make a decision. So I think the policy as written is a good idea, and it supports the administration. And also I believe it supports pre-approval, which is very important of signs. So I personally am not in favor of the option for prohibiting all political signs. But as written without that, I support it.
Okay. Teresa?
I support it as well.
This policy as written?
As written. And, to Don's point too, anything that's going to disrupt, the school environment, I think we need, and I think this will definitely help, and I look at you, Mr. Adrian, for that, because this is where it mostly occurs in high school, so definitely for this or anything, as well as, any attorney advice that we're given, as well as to Don's point.
So do you support which one? The policy as written or with the ban on political signs?
I think she said as written.
As written, okay.
Right.
Okay. Abby, we haven't heard from you.
I'd like to say that I don't think the attorney actually recommended the policy. The attorney's first recommendation was not to have a policy. I think about my children. I think about being able to respectfully acknowledge our differences, whether that's a memorial service where we allow students during the school academic day to walk out and support the students that were tragically killed during the gun violence. And I don't think we can have it both ways. I don't want my child to be censored. I don't want her to be disruptive. But I also have a problem when we're not supporting the First Amendment. And I've put a lot of thought into it, so I don't support the policy.
Okay, Beth?
No, I haven't changed my mind either.
Okay.
Right, and I'd just like to make one last comment too, to Abby, just to make sure you are clear. Jay Greene did not say that we should not have a policy.
His first recommendation was that he did not recommend that we have a policy, and I think Randy could probably.
Well, this started way back on February 1st of 2017, and at that time he recommended that if we're going to do the policy, we do it one of a couple different ways, is what he specifically said. Right, but I don't think he said you said that he said we shouldn't have it, and I don't think that's what he said. So I'm just trying to make sure that's clear.
That's not what I gleaned from the administration when they explained it. That the first of all.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Please, no, please.
Because I did have a conversation with him on the telephone, and he said to me verbally that it's not his place to make a recommendation as to whether the board should or shouldn't have a policy. His place is to draft the legal policy that I requested him to draft, and he's given a sense. So he does not have a recommendation as to whether we should or shouldn't. And they made that pretty clear to me verbally, which is exactly what I would expect our attorney to say.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the policy?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Well, I move to approve the adoption of Board Policy 7317 as presented.
Okay. And second. It's been moved by Don Bozeman and seconded by Cheryl Bluth. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Bozeman,
Aye.
Disharum,
No.
Holzhauser,
Aye.
Humboldt, no. Reed,
Nay.
Allen,
No.
Blue.
Aye.
Okay, so the motion did not carry. Information regarding the request to remove the law firm of Hodges, Luigi, Eisenhammer, Roddick, and Kahn from the district's list of attorneys is included in the board packet. Are there any questions? You know, I would just say that, you know, I worked with Stan a lot, and he was outstanding to work with. I know there's been a question about the hourly fees and his fees being a little bit higher than our other law firm. But in dealing with law firms, that's only one piece of the puzzle. It's really the project cost. So if somebody has experience in an area, they may take less time to do a project than somebody that doesn't have as much experience. And in the case of this law firm, they represent many, many school districts throughout the state of Illinois. I asked Stan to say, you know, how many times does he deal with the issues like the superintendent contract, the mutual separation agreements that we dealt with. And he said, you know, it's different every year, but, you know, he does about 10 of these a year. And that does not include severance issues that he deals with, which are about once a week. He is an expert on this. He's recognized as an expert by the Illinois Association of School Boards, who has him present yearly at the conference. I think it's really prudent for us to keep this firm on in case we have additional questions regarding the case that he dealt with. I think it would not be wise to go to a different attorney who did not deal with that issue if we should have future questions. I also think it's wise to have a backup attorney for the school district. If Jay Greening would be busy or, you know, have other issues, I think it's always good to have a backup. We've used this firm, as do many firms. Half of the firms that use this firm are from downstate or outside of the Collier County areas. School districts, yeah. Pardon?
You said that half of the firms that use.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. Half the school districts that use the firm of Hodges and Louisi are from, you know, downstate. So there's just a widespread respect for this law firm, and I think we should keep him.
CEQA uses this law firm, and we are part of CEQA, so we already use the law firm. Many of the school districts in this area also utilize this law firm.
It just doesn't make sense to me. Why would we remove a law firm from our directory and or as a resource unless they did something wrong, which he absolutely did not. I mean, I don't know what he possibly did. We've had excellent professional service from him. He was responsive, and I just don't know why we'd even take that just to never use him again and not allow future boards to use him again. That just doesn't make, I just don't understand that.
Who said never use him again or never let
Well, because it says remove him from...
Yeah, from our current list of attorneys.
Okay, I don't see why we would do that either.
Well, I'll let anybody
So, but
else
that's
go.
just my
If I
opinion.
can address just a little bit with, to Karen's point. Nobody doubts that he's a seasoned attorney. He is, as is our district attorney. As far as the cost difference, I think both attorneys would take the same amount of time to do the same amount of work because they're both seasoned. So the cost difference is there. There's a 40% difference between the two attorneys, and then their primary staff that they use is a 75% difference, $120 per hour. That really adds up. That being said, it's not just a cost issue. As a board member, I hate to see that 4 people want to go down this path and retain him as a backup attorney, because we came into this in this situation. It's a divisive issue, and yet we should be past and moving forward. But by retaining him, it continues that divisiveness. In this situation, he was hired for a specific issue when the board did not even get to hear from our district attorney before there was a consensus to hire someone else. So that process in and of itself is a problem. And then there was a 4-3 vote, but we didn't have an opportunity to interview him as a board. There was a vote, 4-3, we didn't interview anybody else. We were told that this was for this specific issue, and then we'd be done. We have that in writing, that this is it, this is the only person from you here. And now we're sitting at the table, now trying to keep an attorney that was one of the most divisive parts of the whole process. So I don't know why you want to hang on.
I think it's possible that questions could still arise from this issue. And so I think it would be unwise to not have the same person who worked on that issue be available and not have to bring up another attorney up to speed.
That's not what I'm hearing from you guys, that it would just be for this specific, should issues come up on that issue.
Certainly for that.
Many districts have multiple attorneys, and many, as you know, being your profession, and many firms have different attorneys for a number of different reasons, right? You might have a healthcare attorney, you might have just a corporate attorney, you might have an HR attorney, right? So I don't think to formally remove someone, we're not going to engage him unless we decide as a group to engage him, but to formally take a stance to remove somebody that has a potential, has done good work, responsive work for us. Why would we take a formal action? We're not paying him, we're not paying a retainer, so just so he's waiting in the wings in case we ever decide to remove him, why would we do that?
I think if you want a second attorney, I think we as a board need to decide together.
Well, that's we would have that. We wouldn't have. This doesn't say we have to use this guy if we choose an attorney outside of our current. That's not saying that. It's just saying he's out there, and you might have a different attorney on some other issue that we choose to go get. Why not? It could be 4 or 5 others. Who knows?
And actually, last month, I think I did bring up the fact that since questions were still arising, that it would just be financially unwise to have him removed and have to go to someone else and catch him up to speed, or he or she spend all those hours on doing that when this law firm already knows the situation.
So now what we're talking about is we're going to keep this person as a backup for only this specific personnel issue.
Not necessarily.
No.
He's just there in the directory in case.
We haven't had a chance to interview anybody else.
We're not. Wait a second. I don't think that says that. You're asking to remove him from. It says. The motion says, I move to approve the removal of them from the district list of attorneys. Why would we do that? It could be a huge list at some point.
Well, I'm trying to figure out the line has changed.
No.
From what was originally
what this motion says.
I understand what the motion says. I'm asking you guys, where do you stand on this? Is this someone that we're going to use as a backup attorney should any issue come up, or is it just on this issue because there might still be questions? I'm just trying to get a read on it.
Well, I think first of all, definitely for questions that arise. But in the past, other superintendents have used Kawajas and Louisi as a backup on personnel issues because that's kind of their expertise. So I think it'd be good to have that person if our next superintendent wants to use that law firm. I think that'd be, and if it should be their choice.
If the situation arises that we need to use this law firm for whatever reason, I think we would discuss it as a board.
Confidential issue. That person be available. I think you're maybe assuming that we want to change law firms, and that's not what this is intended to be.
Yeah, I mean, we may not spend another dime if there's not another question, on this issue.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a lot to say. I agree with Cheryl and Teresa, and this is, this is an extremely divisive issue. And board members at this table have said it themselves that they specifically sought out this individual for a specific reason. Now that in itself is alarming to me because I didn't know at the time we were going down this path that we had a reason to specifically seek out a specific attorney that does this type of sensitive personnel work well. So that in itself to me is alarming and kind of new since the last meeting when it was said the first time. That in itself. What were you after that you were looking for a very specific attorney that deals with this very specific type of separation agreement? That in itself is very alarming to me that because this board, at least 4 members of this board were going down that path before we had done any meeting or any discussion to go through anything that would have led to someone finding a specific individual. That in itself is alarming. The reason that this is on here is for very valid reasons. One, their costs are significantly higher than other attorneys, not just the one we currently have, who has been with this district for many, many years, but several others that are very legitimate and very well-versed in the law. Their costs are more. So that reason alone would be enough for us to say, you know what, we probably could remove that one. If we choose, which this district with multiple administrators, in the 8 years I've been here and probably prior to that, have not had any office other than Jay Greening's office. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm not saying you can't have other people, but certainly if you're going to acquire additional counsel, you would do it through the proper procedures and use the best practices of the Illinois Association of School Boards, which means you would do bare minimum, get resumes, you would ask for people, you would do some kind of vetting, you would look at their costs and do a comparison. These are the things you do as a skilled board member trying to protect your taxpayers' interests. And to people who sit at this board who are very concerned about costs, who are very concerned about spending, to go out and acquire one of the most expensive attorneys who has to travel from Chicago to here, and we're going to acquire those costs. I mean, I just find that alarming in itself. What was so special that you would go out and seek someone that far away to come in? On top of all of those things that are so wrong and how this was handled and how it was done. And if you want additional counsel, absolutely. The purpose of having this agenda item is to remove it from the negative, unethical way in which it was done the first time, and to go about it in a professional way that follows best practices. And say, hey, board, let's have a discussion in open session. We perhaps would need to have another legal counsel on staff. How should we go about that? What are we looking for? What are the criteria? How many years of experience would we need? And then we would get the resumes, get the information, do an RFP process of some sort, and then we would say, of these 4 people who we have in front of us, I think this person is our person. They've dealt with this kind of situation. They've worked with these districts who are similar size. You know, they've had so many years in their law firm. They have, you know, junior attorneys and we look at all those costs and variables, and then we make a decision. And then we have a secondary law firm on staff. But to have someone recommend to someone that, hey, for what you're looking to do, this is your guy, and then to run out to Chicago and grab this individual and bring him into our fold and pay him more than what we're paying our other attorneys, I think that is just wrong. And I think if we were concerned about our taxpayers and we wanted to do what's in the best interest of our district, that we would back through that process. What's done is done, obviously, but I think there, to Cheryl's point, there's a point where you say, we draw the line here, and if you want to go back, if you feel the need to have additional legal counsel, then you do it the right way, which means you go through those proper steps and you vet out the agencies. And I mean, just to throw this on top of everything else, you guys, I don't know if you remember, but back in 2013, there was an article, it probably was in the Peoria Journal-Star, and there was a dispute between Central Illinois school districts, right? And I'll read the article, it's just brief. A dispute between 2 Central Illinois school districts is heating up. The Peoria School District, who this attorney represents, District 150, is suing the Dunlap School District over $125,000 in claims Dunlap shouldn't have received. Peoria School District Attorney, the same gentleman, Stan Eiselhammer, says the Peoria County Clerk made a coding error between 2002 and 2008 and mistakenly paid property taxes to the wrong district. Factual case. Eisenhammer, this attorney, says that the Peoria School District has made several attempts to collect the cash, but Dunlap officials refuse to cooperate. So on top of everything else, and on top of the thousands of attorneys that are out there that represent schools well to choose from, you choose the one gentleman who represents District 150 who actually sued Dunlap School District in 2013. I mean, you talk about a conflict of interest. You talk about this could happen in the future. I mean, why, of all the thousands and thousands of attorneys that are out there, the fact that you would go and choose this individual and then fight to keep him. And I'll tell you this.
Just so we clarify the record, his law firm did not sue Dunlap School District. The district he was engaged by sued.
It doesn't matter. He
so
represented them.
just to make sure.
He represents the school district. They border us. This was an issue in 2013. It could be an issue in the past. Why would we choose that conflict of interest and invite it into our school district? I'll say this. It sounds like we have 4 individuals who really want to keep him, and I'm afraid of the reason why. And, you know, I was hoping we wouldn't have to go there, but if we have to go there, I'm absolutely 100% more than ready to do that.
Okay.
There are things, I'll finish.
Okay, I thought you were finished.
There are things that this board and this attorney have done that I feel are extremely unethical. To the point that if we seek additional counsel, I would like them to review this very situation. That individual could very likely be brought up on charges of being unethical. Very likely. And I'm not speaking just because I like to speak. I've talked to the Illinois Association of School Board Attorneys. I've sought outside legal counsel. And there's very likely a concern there. So what I will tell you in this last moment, if you choose to continue to go the path with this individual who is allowing you all to keep information, pertinent information, from sitting board members who are elected in these seats, if you continue to go down that path, that this individual is basically at this point, this individual is personal counsel for members of this board. And he is protecting you and hiding it behind the law. That is unethical and borderline illegal. I'll tell you this, you keep him here and you will see that there will be something else that will be coming forward. And that's all I can tell you, because I'll tell you what was done
Let's vote.
is unethical.
Let's vote.
Right? And
Let's vote.
I know you don't want to hear more, but because it's getting too close and right, it's not a comfortable place to be. But I've been silent for long enough. This was my last ditch effort, to Cheryl's point, to try to close that door, right? And draw that line in the sand. If you continue to keep this person who then you call and have write up information to protect you so you don't have to share information with board members. Some of us don't have the information. As elected board members, that is wrong. We cannot sit here and be the board members we're supposed to be from these seats without having full access and disclosure to information. And you have hired an attorney that allows you to say that you don't have to share information. And that is absolutely wrong, and it's absolutely unethical. And there are several people who I've talked to that feel that that has to stop. And you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. You do what you choose to do, and then we'll have to move on from there. And I thank you for Cheryl and Teresa for speaking up, but at some point, the rubber has to meet the road. And I waited. I'm glad school's out. There's not a lot of teachers here, but this has to be discussed. We cannot let it continue.
Okay, is there a motion?
I want to comment real quick, and I want to let everyone know that, you know, we're elected officials, just like Dawn referenced to. And I echo Dawn's statement. She's very eloquent in how she puts all the words together, but it is indeed 100% truthful. I echo her comments in their entirety, as well as everything that Cheryl said. It's very difficult for us as board members. We are here to do what's best for the students in our district. And that's, I'm sure everyone on the board is that way. But exactly what Cheryl said, there's divisiveness on this board, and everyone can see that, and it continues. So once again, I just want to echo Cheryl and Dawn's comments.
Okay, any other comments?
No, other than, I know, Cheryl, you spoke to Karen and you reminded her of her statements in the past. Karen, do you recollect that information? That you spoke, that you said that after this situation, we were done with the representation? You put that in writing.
I don't remember it, but maybe I did.
You did. I can send it to you if you like. But you exactly said those words.
Okay.
It's just a landmine, and I'm surprised that you guys would be willing to step on it. You know?
Well, I'm surprised that you wouldn't.
Frankly, change the language in the wording in this. This says to remove somebody from an attorney list. If you want to change this, which I would approve, that we're not going to engage this other attorney unless there's a vote to do so on any further item, I think it's fine. But what you're asking for this motion, which was drawn up probably incorrectly, is to remove an attorney law firm from our list of available attorneys. It's worded wrong.
I think Dawn clearly specified what the reasoning is.
Why would we take the action to remove them? For what reason?
If we need to have a backup attorney, we would go
we
through
have
the
that here.
process.
Okay, but we would, but why remove? Why not say that firm still stays engaged as a law firm, and there might be 3 or 4 others we engage? Why take the formal action? So just change the verbiage. If you're concerned about using him in the future, I don't think any one of us says, oh, let's move the business. We're not saying that. We use him for the one
I
time.
think it's the behavior of the attorney.
I mean, just change your motion.
No, I think
I want to say that we were put in a very unfortunate situation. We were placed in an unfortunate situation. And the reason an additional attorney was sought, because we were having difficulty with confidentiality, with issues being discussed. All right? And it continued while we were in closed session, that information was being shared outside via text.
That
Yes.
has nothing to do with Jay Green.
Well, it has everything to do with the
Yeah, let's just call a vote.
Okay,
Let's just
so-
call a vote.
Nothing to do with the attorney.
Okay, so is there a motion?
I'll make the motion, and I think I've made it already, actually. I move to approve the removal of Hodges, Louisi, Eiselhammer, Roddick, and Cohn from the district's list of attorneys.
I second.
Okay, it's been moved by Don Bozeman, seconded by Teresa Holzhauser. Is there discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Bozeman?
Aye.
Holzhauser? Aye. Humboldt? No. Reed?
Nay.
Zawin?
No.
Blue? Aye. Disharu?
No. Motion does not carry. This concludes the action item segment of the meeting. Mr. Merker will present the superintendent's report.
Mr. Bambrick, you're up.
I just wanted to take a brief moment just to thank each of you for the opportunity to work in one of the premier districts in Illinois. It's been a real pleasure and an honor. The reputation that Dunlap School District has in Illinois, one of the reasons I wanted to be part of something great is why I pursued this opportunity as well. And during my brief time here, I've discovered a few things that make it so. And I start off with one being an impassioned Board of Education that believes in what they are doing. It does take passion. It doesn't say that we all have to agree 100% of the time, but it's an impassioned Board of Education. A cohesive administrative team that works hard to provide academic programs to meet the needs of all students, and it's been well documented as well across the state. A rock-solid, dedicated group of teachers and support staff who work tirelessly to provide academically rigorous instruction for all students. And then high-performing students who take advantage of what Dunlap has to offer and advancing their lives. And a considerate and compassionate community that provides far-reaching support for all of the district's programs. And last and certainly not least, and quite possibly among the most important, is the relationships that have been built among all the groups that I previously mentioned. There are relationships that have been fostered, and that's very apparent. And I felt very welcome since the very first day, and supported each day, going all the way back to the first day that I arrived in the district. And while we can learn from our past, we can't rewrite our past. But it's important to know that we not dwell on the past either, that each of us does have the future to look forward to. And that future is an opportunity to grab that clean sheet of paper and write a new future moving forward. So thanks again for allowing me to work in such an outstanding setting, and I wish nothing but the best for Dunlap School District as you move forward, and everyone who's a part of it, everyone who's associated with it. As for me, I have 2 granddaughters that are waiting to see their grandpa. Thank you.
Thank you, Johnny.
We're going to miss you. You both.
I want to also take the opportunity to say a couple of things here in my last meeting. Start off with some thank yous. Let me start off with Jack. It's been a pleasure. You know, we've met before, but the relationship that we were able to develop during these 6 months has been great. I mean, it's like you're my brother. We think so. Actually, you're in a lot of ways better than my brother.
And this is still being recorded, right?
I'm okay with that being recorded. He'll understand that completely. But it has been good. working with you during these 6 months. I want to send out a thanks to the district office staff that are not here with us tonight, except for Carrie. But the office staff just made it so easy for us to come in and transition in. Anything that they asked us to do, they did. Anything we asked them, rather, to do, they did. And it just was easy to walk into that environment working. And a special thanks to Carrie, who came on board a little after I did, but has been rock solid and has made my job so much easier. You may or may not have noticed tonight when the question came, are there any additional agenda items? Well, I don't know. I looked at Carrie. Carrie? and because Carrie would know, and I knew she would know. That's what you have in Carrie. Thank you very much. Here in our district office, Heather was there when I got there, and I told you in January, I'm wearing out a path going back and forth. Well, that path is now worn out, and we're down to tile. So Heather's been great to work with, personality, knowledge of curriculum. Curriculum's not my specialty anyway, and I rely on everything that she did at a very high level. Thank you very much. Alyssa has come on with us as our Director of Student Services this year, and her and I spent time together talking about student services, but we spent time together talking about administrative life in general and all kinds of things. Probably spent a lot more time actually with Alyssa than I did with Heather during this year. And Alyssa and I actually today were talking about a letter grade that she got today, but let me tell you, as a person, and you get an A. Very much. We only have a few of our principals and administrators here tonight, which is unfortunate because I'd like to thank each and every one of them for the support that you gave to me and the ear that you gave to me as in a two-way street back and forth. Our administrative team, as you all know, is strong. They're a strong group, and they were just very helpful to me. I hope I was of some benefit to some of them, but they were all very helpful to me to integrate into the district. It was good. When I came in on January 1, I told you my goal was on July 1 that I wanted the district to be in a slightly better spot than it was when I got here. I hope that's the case, and I pray that that's the way that it has ended up. As I came in, I thought, well, I'm going to come into the district. I'm going to work. I'm going to do some projects. I'll do some stuff things that are in my wheelhouse. I'm probably not going to get too invested in the district. I'm just going to come in and work. And I found out really quickly, it didn't work that way. I got here, and within a pretty short period of time, I became invested. I found that I started to care. Maybe I started to care a little too much. I don't know. But I started to care, and I started to care a lot. In this short amount of time, I've really grown to love the district and have enjoyed what I've done. I actually wish I was like 42 instead of 62, so I can work for another 20 years. Yeah, but that's not the case. Didn't get to meet as many kids in the district as I wanted to that just didn't work in the job. But the people of the district, whether it's the folks that I've already mentioned here, not many teaching staff here tonight. I see John hiding in the back somewhere. Not many teaching staff here tonight, but the folks that I met off the teaching staff have been positive and supportive. It's been great. Let me end with a final thank you to the board and to thank all of you for giving me the chance to be part of that. This was really, for me, the opportunity of a lifetime, and I'm really grateful for the faith that you had in me and showed in me to offer me to this position and hire me here, for bringing Jack in with me. I would not have been successful without Jack by my side doing all the things that he was able to do. And I truly appreciate for all of you the faith that you showed in me to offer me this position. Let me end then with a quote from Paul that I think applies to each and every one of us that are educators here in the room, when he said, "As for you, brothers and sisters, never tire of doing what is good." Thank you.
thank you. This concludes our action item segment of the meeting, and concludes our public portion of the meeting. The board will now move into closed session. Could I please have a motion to adjourn to closed session?
I move to adjourn to closed session for the following purposes as stated in the Open Meetings Act. Student disciplinary cases, the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body, discussion of minutes of meetings lawfully closed, security procedures, and litigation.
She did add it.
Oh, you did it.
Is there a second? Second. Okay, it was moved by Cheryl Booth. It was seconded by, by Don Bozeman. Is there any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Aye. Bozeman.
Aye.
Reed.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. We are adjourned to closed session. Okay.
And also you ready.
You mean now or before the meeting? Could I have a motion? Are we ready? Oh, okay, thank you.
So, thank you.
Could I have a motion to approve the human resources consent agenda, please?
I make a motion to approve the human resources agenda as presented.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
It's been moved by Abby Humboldt, seconded by Brian Zowen. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Humboldt. Aye. Salmon.
Aye.
Blue.
Aye.
Bozeman.
Aye.
Disharu.
Aye.
Olspencer. Aye. Reed. Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Could I please have a motion to approve the closed session minutes?
I move to approve the closed session minutes of the regular board meeting of May 16th, 2018 as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Brian Zowen, seconded by Teresa Holzhauser. Is there any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Salmon.
Aye.
Olspencer. Bozeman.
Aye.
Disharu.
Aye.
Humboldt. Aye. Reed.
Aye.
Blue.
Aye.
Motion carries. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
It's been moved by Cheryl Booth and seconded by one of you, Don Bozeman. Any discussion? Roll call. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Motion carries. The meeting is adjourned at 8:00.
Can't have it.
I can't believe I forgot my umbrella. Yeah, you get my that's right. Yeah. I know, we're getting drenched.
Yeah, you good.